Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing a layout with you that I created for Mystical Scrapbooks. The August challenge or the August theme is textiles, and my particular challenge was to use a handmade fabric or textile embellishment on your layout. This is the layout I created. The papers I'm using for this layout are from Colourblast and the range is called Love and Grace. I will put a link to these papers in the description box if you're interested in having a look at them. I end up using two of these papers. One's called Effie, which is the bluish coloured one, and the other one is called Vonnie. I also use a sheet of black cardstock. Because the theme is textiles, I also use some burlap ribbon and some white tassel-y type of ribbon, and also some handmade paper, handmade fabric flowers. I do have a video showing how I created these flowers, and I will put that in the description as well. For my background layers, I leave my black cardstock 12 inches square. I cut this blue cardstock, which is called Effie, down to 11 3/4 by 11 3/4, and my white cardstock I trimmed down to 11 1/4 by 11 1/4. I cut a 1-inch frame from the Effie pattern paper because I wanted to use some of the middle section of this cardstock in my layers. So I'm going to add some texture to my background, and to do that I'm using this Montmartre modelling paste and a Kaisercraft stencil called Tribal Collage. I'm going to use my palette knife to push the texture paste through the stencil to create the pattern. I'm just going to do that randomly on the background. I'm not going to cover the whole thing, just here and there. I've set that aside to dry, and now I'm inking around the edge of my second layer of paper, and I'm going to use double-sided tape to secure that to my black background cardstock. I'm going to use my blending brush to apply some of this mustard seed distress ink through my Kaisercraft floral stencil, just randomly over the background to give a bit of colour to the background. I'll then use double-sided tape to add that to my background layers. I do ink around the edge of this before I actually attach it to the background. I ink around the edge of all of my papers using black ink. Still working on my background, I use this clear stamp. I can't remember what brand it is, I'll have to have a look, and I'll leave it in the description box. And my distress ink in broken china, and just stamp lightly in the background. I do first generation and second generation stamping with this, because I don't want it to be too heavy, but I just want it to be there to add a bit more interest. I'm going to start work on my photo now. I'm not doing much to it. I use an emery board to file around the edge of the photo. My photo is 3 3/4 inches square. And once I've done that, I cut a piece of black cardstock that is 4 inches by 4 inches, I'd say, or a bit less, and mat my photo on that. I've cut an assortment of sizes of paper from both Effie and Vonnie, and I'm going to ink around the edge of those. These are going to be my layers behind my photo as I create my clusters. I'm going to make a couple of fishtails in 2 of the pieces of paper. I measure up a 1/2 inch, find the centre of the pattern paper, and then cut diagonally from the corner up to the centre point that I've marked. I want my photo to be raised up from the background, so I've used some craft foam, just cut a couple of strips, and I'm going to stick that to the back of my photo using Aleene's Turbo Tacky Glue. I also use this knockout punch to punch along the long edge of one of the pattern papers that I had cut a strip of to go behind my photo. I attach that piece of pattern paper to the back of the photo, and then I start work on my layers. I put them where I think I might like them, and then I use either double-sided tape or glue to hold them in position. I play around with this for some time, and just all I'm doing is putting something somewhere, see if I like the look of it. If I do, I stick it down. If I think it needs to be moved, well then I'll move it, try it in a different position. And once I've got everything, I sort of try and stick things as I go, otherwise I lose the plot, to be honest. And yeah, so that's basically how I work out where my layers are going to go and what's going to go where and what size it's going to be. I'm continually adjusting the sizes as I go. I'll cut something down. When I start cutting the layers, I just cut them to what I think might be a usable size and then trim them as I need them. Now that I've got my cluster assembled, I attach it to my layout. I'm just deciding where I want to place it, and I want to try and make sure that I get it nice and straight. Because the theme for the month is textiles, I wanted to add some more textiles, so I'm using some of this burlap ribbon. I'm going to attach that to my layout on the right hand edge of my photograph, but before I do that I'm going to add some of this white tassel-y lace on top of it. I'm using Aleene's original tacky glue to do that, and once I've got all of that in place, I'm going to then glue it under the edge of the right hand side of the photo. At this stage I decided that the background was too wishy-washy for my taste, so I dug up an assortment of little stamps They come from a collection or an assortment of stamp collections. I just picked bits and pieces from each, and I'm using my black stays on ink, and I'm using a little post-it as a mask, and I'm just stamping randomly into the background with these 3 black stamps. I'm sort of putting them in a little cluster. I felt like it still needed a bit of darkness amongst the pattern papers, so I used this little strip of black cardstock and just layered that in behind a couple of the pattern papers. I think it helps to separate some of those layers. I wanted to make a little cluster down in the bottom right hand of the layout, so to do that all I did was collect up a few scraps that were laying on my desk and attach them on top of each other. So I started with some of the burlap ribbon and then layered some pattern papers on top. Time for my handmade flower embellishments to be positioned. So I did make these flowers myself. There is a video showing how I did that, so I will put a link to that in the description box if you want to check out how these were made. They're very easy to make, so yeah, check that out, have a look. And it goes with the textiles theme for the month over on Mystical Scrapbooks. I'm just playing around here with the layout of the flowers, how I'm going to have them, and once I'm happy with how they look, I will attach them to the page. I'll also attach some leaves in amongst it. I've also added some paper flowers in amongst the handmade flowers, and I've added a small paper flower to the cluster on the bottom right. I'm using my brand new hot glue gun to attach these flowers. My Bosch hot glue gun that I've had for quite a few years gave up the ghost, so I had to go and buy a new one. For my title I have these wooden letters. I'm going to use my broken china ink. I've put a bit of that onto a piece of packaging, and I'm using my water brush to just dab in the ink and then apply that to the letters. I don't want these letters to be solid colour. I'm looking for like a sort of patchy look that sort of blends in with the pattern paper that I've used. There's not much solid colour in that. So I'm going to do that to each of the letters so that I get a nice blue. Once I've applied the colour, I'm going to use my heat gun and dry them off, and then I'm going to use glue to attach them to my layout. I'm going to put them just so they tuck slightly under the photo mat at the top of the photo. Wanted a bit more of a border around my white layer, so I took my Uniball fine liner and just drew a very rough border around the outside of the white layer. So that completes my layout for today. If you've got some time, pop over to Mystical Scrapbooks blog or Facebook page and check out the August challenge. There are 2 challenges. This is the one that I've created. There's another one as well, so check them out. And if you've enjoyed watching my video and you're not already a subscriber, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel, and if you have some crafty friends that might like watching this, please share my video with them. Thank you.